Once upon a time, there was an old man who lived in a crooked old house. The house had lived through 300 summers and winters, and each year the wood warped and the house became more crooked. The old man had not been crooked when he moved in there, but just as the moisture warped the wood, the house warped the man. Every morning, he got out of bed and climbed up the hill to the kitchen. The floor had become so steep that he truly had to climb. He took to sharp hooks and pushed them into the floor and pulled himself up the hill. Once he was in the kitchen, he made his morning tea and his breakfast, and there was one part of the floor that was so warped that he could sit in it. It was so warped that it made a nice chair. The old man sat on the floor chair, drank his tea, and ate his toast. Afterward, he went to the bathroom. In order to get there, he went to the edge of the kitchen, put the climbing hooks in his pocket, and rode a zipline down to the end of the corridor. In the past, he had rolled down the hill, but after hurting himself badly one time, he installed the zipline. A few times, he had forgotten his hooks in the kitchen, and then it was awful because he would have to climb the corridor with his hands. He remembered one particularly bad occasion when he was hungry, and it took him almost an hour to reach the kitchen. After that, he bought a spare pair of hooks, which he kept in his bedroom just in case. The bathroom was not as warped as the rest of the house, but it was the moistest part of it. When he walked into the bathroom, it was like walking into a jungle at first. Mushrooms grew in there, some even grew on his toothbrush. He made sure to wash them off before brushing his teeth, and it really wasn't much of a problem. Then other things started to grow. Ferns and tropical plants. One day, he found a frog hiding in one of the ferns. Eventually, the drains stopped working when the old man showered. The water took a very long time to drain, and finally it stopped draining completely. He called in a plumber, but when the plumber saw the man's bathroom, he said, "All the money in the world wouldn't be enough for me to fix this. I think you should set this house on fire and start again, except it's probably too moist to set on fire now." The old man didn't like people talking badly about his house, so he never called in a plumber again. He had his own ideas about why the drain might have stopped working. Probably part of the floor warped and moved the pipes, but you couldn't do anything about warping. It was an old house, and old houses were beautiful and crooked. He hated to admit it, but their carrot cake had been very good. If that's all you have to say, then don't come round here again, he thought for a moment. Actually, you can bring cake, just leave it by the door. Oh no, said the young people. We do love visiting you. Why don't we sit and have a cup of tea? So they pretended to be comfortable on the sofa, surrounded by all the wild animals. It was very hard for them to pretend because the floor under the sofa was so warped that they kept falling off. After that, the young people from the association stopped coming around. The old man thought it was a shame because he really liked their cake, but as long as he had the energy to climb up to the kitchen, he could certainly bake his own cakes. And he had 2 nice new tins to put the cake in. Though recently, he had lost the energy to cook much. Instead, he just ate the mushrooms that grew in the bathroom. He didn't even have to climb up to the kitchen for that. One day, as the old man was ziplining down from the kitchen, the zipline broke. Snap. He fell to the floor and rolled all the way to the bottom of the hill. The house started to shake and the climbing hooks fell off the wall with a clang. The wild animals made horrible noises and the fish in the bath tried to jump out of the water. In the sitting room, the sofa fell and rolled across the floor and the old man couldn't get up. He had hurt himself in the fall, but more than that, he simply didn't want to. He was cold and it was moist. And hadn't he done enough in this life? So he lay down on the floor and let the house take him. The ferns from the bathroom slowly climbed over and wrapped their fingers around him. The moisture poured down the walls and made a pool until only his face was above the water. Some of the animals came and sniffed him, and when he did nothing, they opened their mouths. Before the old man closed his eyes, he thought he even saw a mushroom get up and move towards him. The crooked old house let out a sigh. 300 summers and winters were more than enough. The bones of the house started to break, and then, in a few seconds, the whole thing came down. The ceilings fell, the water rose, and before people outside knew what was happening, the ground had eaten the whole place up. For years afterward, people spoke of the crooked old man who lived in the crooked old house. Although people searched for months, nobody could find the body. Some of the animals were rescued, although they weren't very friendly to the humans who saved them, and the walls, doors, plants, and furniture mixed into the earth. 100 summers and 100 winters later, when people had long forgotten about the crooked old house, something moved in the wet earth. Nobody was watching, so nobody noticed it. But if someone had looked very closely, they would have seen something small push out of the ground. It was a tiny wooden door, opening in the spring like a new flower.
The old man welcomed the king. Hurry, he said to Zeta Hasi, bring some water and wash our guest's feet. Zeta Hasi ran to find water. He washed the king's feet. The king smiled at Zeta Hasi. He liked him. Here is a fine, strong young man, he thought. He works hard for his father, and he shows respect for his father's guests. Your son is a good boy, he said to the old man. This boy is not my son, my lord, the old man said. He came to us from the sea. What said the king? What do you mean? One day, 12 years ago, the old man went on. I was walking on a beach. It was the morning after a great storm. I found a box. I opened it and inside it was a little boy. I took him home with me. My wife was very happy because God had not given us any children. Ta-da! Payment made easy with our BC and Apple Watch. Author extended. Get the new Apple Watch when you switch to our BC. This boy became our son. We called him Zeta Hasi. The king frowned. He looked at Zeta Hasi angrily. Now, he is my enemy. He thought he will kill me and take my throne. The king thought quickly. He tried to smile again. Listen, he said to the old man. I like your son. He's a fine boy. I must go back soon to my palace. Send him to me, and I will look after him. He will be a rich man, a powerful man. A great future is waiting for him. He called to one of his servants. Give me some paper and a pen, he said. The servant brought some paper and a pen, and the king wrote a letter to my guards. He wrote, catch this boy and kill him. Bury his body in front of my palace. Can you read this? He asked the boy. The boy looked at the paper and shook his head. I don't know this language, he said. I can't read it. Good, said the king. Don't lose this paper. Give it to the soldiers at the gate of my palace. They will bring you to me. Thank you, my lord, said Zeta Hasi. Come soon, the king said. And then he went away. The old man and his wife were sad. They did not want to lose Zeta Hasi. They loved him, but Zeta Hasi was happy and excited. When can I go to the palace and see the king? Father, he said every morning. Can I go today? Not yet, my son. Not yet, the old man answered. At last, the old man and his wife agreed. They called Zeta Hasi to them. Our dear son, they said. We can't keep you here any longer. You can go to the king's palace, but don't forget us. Come home again soon. Then they blessed Zeta Hasi and said goodbye. Zeta Hasi began his journey. The road was long. It went through deep valleys and high mountains. On the highest mountain of all, he saw the wizard's eagle in the sky. The eagle flew down to Zeta Hasi. It began to pack at his clothes. The king's letter fell out of the boy's pocket. The eagle picked it up in its beak and flew away with it. No, no, Zeta Hasi called out. Bring back my letter. It's from the king. But the eagle had already gone. Zeta Hasi sat down on a rock. He was unhappy. The king will never see me now, he thought. His servants will keep me away from him. Then he saw something white on the ground. He picked it up. It was another letter. Zeta Hasi looked at it, but he couldn't read it. He didn't understand the language. Did the eagle drop this? He thought, perhaps the king's servants will understand it. Perhaps it will help me to see the king. He put the new letter in his pocket and went on, down the road. At last, Zeta Hasi came to the king's palace. It was a fine stone building. But where are the soldiers? He thought, where are the king's guards and all his servants? After a long time, a servant came out of the palace. He saw the boy standing by the gate. Who are you? He called out. And what do you want? The king invited me to come here. Zeta Hasi answered. The king isn't here. The man said, go away. But he gave me a letter, said Zeta Hasi. Look, here it is. Show it to me. The man said, so. Zeta Hasi showed him the letter. The man opened it and began to read. This man is Zeta Hasi. The letter said, he is a prince. I have chosen him to be my daughter's husband. Arrange the marriage quickly. Do not wait for my return. The servant bowed to Zeta Hasi at once. My master, he said, I am happy to see you. The princess is here. I will obey the king and arrange the wedding. You will be married tomorrow. The next day, Zeta Hasi married the king's daughter. The cooks made a great feast. The musicians played wonderful music. Zeta Hasi saw his bride, and she was very beautiful. He loved her at once. In the evening, the king came home. He rode up to the palace on his white mule. "What's happening here?" he said. "Why are all these people here? What is the music for? And why is everyone dancing?" "My lord," the servant said, "Prince Seda Hassi arrived yesterday. He showed me your letter. I obeyed all your instructions, and today he married your daughter." When he heard this, the king was very, very angry. "What?" he shouted. "This boy, my enemy, has married my daughter." His mule was frightened by the noise, and it reared up. The king fell off. His sword ran into his side, and he died. And so Seda Hassi became the king of the whole country. He sent a servant to bring the old man and the old woman to the palace. Seda Hassi became a great king. He was just and honest. His people loved him, and he became the father of many fine princes.